Hello and welcome to the AI Research Roundup. I'm your host Alex, and today we're diving into a really interesting paper called ReTool Reinforcement Learning for Strategic Tool Use in LLMs. So the main idea here is that while large language models trained with reinforcement learning are great at text reasoning, they often struggle with more structured problems like complex math or computations where tools like code interpreters really shine. This paper ReTool proposes a way to bridge this gap. It uses reinforcement learning to teach models not just how to reason, but also when and how to strategically use computational tools based on whether they actually help solve the problem. Okay, so let's look at Figure 1 here. This shows us exactly how well ReTool performs compared to a standard text-based reinforcement learning approach. We have two graphs, one for the AME 2024 benchmark and one for AME 2025. On the bottom axis, we see the number of training steps, and on the vertical axis, we have the accuracy percentage. Now the blue line with circles represents ReTool, the one that uses the code interpreter. The CN line with squares is the text-only RL baseline. What's really striking in both graphs, especially AIM 2024, is how much faster and higher the ReTool accuracy climbs. It reaches 67% on AME 2024 in just 400 steps, while the text-based model kind of plateaus around 40% even after over 1,000 steps. A similar pattern holds for AME 2025. This really shows the advantage of teaching the model when to use that computational tool. Okay, so building on those performance results we saw in Figure 1, Figure 2 here gives us a visual breakdown of the actual training processes themselves. Up top in Part A, we see the standard text-based RL training. The policy LLM generates text, gets a reward based on the final outcome. Pretty straightforward. But the really interesting part is down below in B, the ReTool RL training, you can see how it's different. The LLM generates not just text, shown in gray, but also code in green. This code is sent to a code sandbox, which then provides interpreter feedback, shown in blue, whether it worked or gave an error, and that feedback goes back into the LLM's reasoning process. This loop allows the model to learn during the rollout how to use the tool effectively. So, having seen how ReTool learns to use the code interpreter in Figure 2, Table 1 here gives us the concrete numbers, the main performance results on those AIM benchmarks. We can see ReTool, especially using the QN backbone we discussed earlier, achieve 67% on AME 2024 and 49.3% on AME 2025. That's a huge jump compared to the text-only RL baseline, which sits at 40% and 36.7% respectively, confirming what we saw visually in the graphs. ReTool even outperforms other strong existing baselines listed here, like OpenAI's O1 preview. The ablation studies at the bottom also reinforce that both the code interpreter and the RL training are crucial for these gains. Right, so those numbers in Table 1 show that ReTool works well. But Figure 3 here digs into how the model's behavior changes during that reinforcement learning training to achieve those results. It tracks several code-related metrics over the training steps for both AME 2024 and 2025. We see some really interesting trends. For instance, look at A, the response length. It actually drops quite a bit, suggesting the model learns to be more concise by using code instead of lengthy text calculations. And related to that, in quote, the code ratio shoots up to nearly 100% very quickly. The model really leans into using the tool. Graph C shows the average number of code lines generated goes up significantly, nearly 5-fold, meaning the model isn't just using the tool, it's using it more extensively. Graph F even shows the model learns to invoke the code earlier in its reasoning process over time, so it's learning to be more strategic and efficient with the tool. Going beyond those general trends we saw in Figure 3, Figure 4 here shows us a really cool specific example of what the paper calls an emergent behavior, code self-correction. You can see the model first tries to run some Python code, but the interpreter sends back an error, a name error, because a function wasn't defined correctly. What's amazing is the model then says, oops, the functions need to be defined in the same scope. Let's correct that. And it actually fixes the code itself based on that interpreter feedback, leading to a successful run. This shows how the RL process allows the model to learn from errors during reasoning. So building on that idea of learned behaviors like self-correction, Figure 6 here provides a really clear side-by-side comparison for the same math problem. On the left, you see the text-based reasoning before RL. It's quite long, involves a lot of manual calculation steps, and actually seems to get a bit tangled up and reaches the wrong answer. But look at the right side. This is the CI-powered reasoning after ReTool training. The model sets up the problem, but then uses code snippets to compute the modular values and even iterate to find the valid number, getting the correct answer much more directly. It really highlights how ReTool learns to offload the tricky calculations to the tool. So yeah, that comparison really drives home the power of ReTool. The key takeaway, I think, is how reinforcement learning provides a strong signal for teaching these models not just that they can use tools, but how to use them strategically, leading to things like self-correction and much more efficient problem solving. This is super important for making large language models more reliable and capable assistants. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to the AI Research Roundup. I'm your host, Alex.